morning.
Good morning, George. How are you doing?
Good. Hey, I haven't hosted a community meeting in a while, so if it comes up,
okay,
like if either of those two don't want to go, I'm set for the next 2 weeks after that though. Like we got some good commitment.
That's great.
Yeah, it's the doldrums this summer. Everyone was either in vacation.
Hang on one sec. I gotta close my window. I'll be right back. That's better. Hey, Dan.
Hey.
I think we got it right this time.
I know. It's amazing.
What's wrong?
No, folks.
Good morning, or actually good evening.
I have a dumb question. How do people feel about top posting on the Kubernetes dev list?
Top posting?
Okay, good.
What do you mean?
What? Yeah, what is that?
Excellent.
What is it?
I was going to reply to your mail, and I've just realized I've only ever made announcements. I don't think I've ever had to respond to someone before.
Well, it has been not only like an announcement, it was also the request.
I'm opposed only because I don't think that most threads employ top posting, which is newest at the top rather than newest at the bottom. So it reads like a discussion post rather than like an email thread thing.
Thank you, Caleb, for clearing that up because I had no idea what they meant.
It took me a minute. It's early, and it's been a long time since I've actually worked in the interwebs.
Oh, yes.
The Usenet days are long behind me.
Yes.
I think we can give people another couple minutes to filter in.
So I have a conflict at the half-hour point. So I'm not sure if it's possible, if there's something that we need to discuss that I need to be a part of, that we do it sort of first, if that's okay. So that the stability release document probably is something that we should discuss while I'm here, since I just wrote it.
Yeah, I agree with you. So I'd like to discuss that item first, and after that we can proceed with the feature updates, and your participants at that point won't be so mandatory as for the stabilization release discussion.
Is that document, does it have share settings so people can read it or comment, or how is it?
Let me update the permissions, because I have shared it only with your partner and Caleb.
Okay.
So at the initial stage, at the same time, I have updated, so anybody can comment now.
Okay.
Do you want to paste that into the meeting notes? And
Yeah,
we
I
could
got it.
probably get started now then if you've got something to talk about. And we're recording. Wonderful.
Well, I'd like to have the bigger audience, the bigger quorum to discuss this because it's really important. And like, unfortunately, I hasn't been able to really attend our last meeting on Thursday because of the networking issues. But I have followed our record, and I have noticed that so many people are really interested in having this question solved and discussed and really formalized. So I'd like us to wait 2 or 3 minutes before other people will join. Probably our partner will join us as well as and some other attendees who would like to discuss it.
Okay. Makes sense.
By the way, do we have a volunteer for the meeting notes?
I can do it. Unless I would actually prefer George did it, but I'll do it.
I could chip in, but I'm going to be in and out because I'm trying to eat lunch. Also.
Yeah, because I gotta leave. I gotta leave as well at a half an hour mark. So I'll do it until I leave. How about that?
Yeah, I'll add in.
Great.
Perfect.
Thank you both.
All right. So
By the way, before we'll start, I have a question to Caleb. It seems that we don't have SIG PM meeting listed in the general community meetings calendar.
Is that so?
I don't see it. I see it only in my private calendar, but I don't see it in the Kubernetes community meeting calendar that is shared with everyone. Probably we can figure it out and add it there.
Yeah, there's a robot user. Let me look for that thing.
I've got it. I'll send it to you via mail. It's like a long, complicated thing.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Slack it to me. I'm Caleb A. Miles. Most places, I think.
So I suppose we're going to start. I hope other people will join us if they're going to. So our meeting is already recorded. Today is August 8th, and this is the bi-weekly meeting for SIG PM, and today we'll have also the volume 2 session for 108 features updates. But we're going to have the updates regarding 108 later today, and now I'd like us with Jason to start with the stabilization definition, stabilization release definition, and so on. So we have created a brief document. It's in early draft stage, and we'd like to receive the community feedback on what should be there and how can we define the stabilization and unstabilization releases further. Because it's a really important topic. It has been discussed several times, also at the Developer Summit in Seattle last year and in San Jose at Leadership Summit. At the same time, we still don't have any formalized proposal, formalized description. So now we are going to solve that problem with the current document. Jason, would you like to start with your description? What have you added to the document?
sure. I'll just give the TLDR of what this document is trying to do. And essentially, it intends to differentiate between what is sort of a standard release, which is more feature-oriented, and a stabilization release, which it goes into some detail about what that actually means. It also makes a point that I think is important for everybody to understand, which is every release should be a stability release in the sense that we shouldn't be putting out things that necessarily disrupt production environments or require extensive rework in order to upgrade. And so it does make it explicit that when we talk about a stabilization release, we're really talking about stabilizing existing functionality within the project and not the overall stability of the project. So that's, I think, a really important differentiator. So essentially what it does is it just says, here's the purpose of a normal feature release, because I think that's important to understand as well. And that's to provide an outlet for community creativity in the form of new functionality, as well as to provide an inlet for customer requested features so that they may be realized as code and put in front of those said customers so that they can get some usage of it and provide feedback to the code maintainers and authors. And that feedback loop is essential to have a really stable, vibrant project. If we don't have that in every release, stabilization or not, we're failing, because that's a critical component. So it says that that's true for every release, and specifically the feature-oriented releases are lean much more toward that. And there's a much lower bar in terms of getting an alpha feature in. So then the stability release gets into, well, there's a certain amount of fatigue that happens if you release every single release full of alpha features. For one, there's a certain amount of technical debt that is introduced with every alpha feature, because it becomes a maintenance burden. What you build, you must maintain. So if every release was flush with alpha functionality, that means that the PM team and also the architecture teams would be spending a great deal of cycles every release trying to assess whether those should be promoted or deprecated. And that's not really sustainable. Also, marketing groups understand that to have the greatest impact, if you're constantly announcing new functionality, people just sort of tune out. So it gives the product management team and the marketing team an opportunity to really dig in and focus and build community strength around exciting new things that are coming up in the functionality set. Additionally, if the Kubernetes community was constantly announcing disruptive new functionality, that doesn't necessarily sit well with a lot of production environments that may not necessarily looking for feature richness as much as they are a product that is mature and satisfies their needs in a production or enterprise capabilities. So there's a lot of good reasons to have an alternating cadence around presenting alpha rich releases versus promotion of existing functionality. So with that differentiation in mind, it does the document does go to a section called Alpha Features and Stability Release, essentially saying that feedback loop between new customer functionality and the release is important. But in order to satisfy the desire to keep a stabilization release focused on feature promotion, we want to have a higher bar for those alpha features. So it goes through some key definitions about what that actually looks like in practice. And fundamentally, it means that the support is there in terms of a SIG, it's funded, it has a clear roadmap for promotion. So it's not just going out there and, hey, let's see what happens. It also should not interfere with stabilization activities undertaken by SIG architecture. So basically, if let's say there's a repository that's going to be split out, putting a whole bunch of new functionality into said repository or said code area is not necessarily, that's at odds with what might be underway for SIG architecture in that stabilization. So it's like, what exactly is this doing, and does it have material impact on something else? Also important is this feature actually laying the ground so that future promotion of functionality will be easier? So basically, is this a feature that is building up the groundwork for other features? So that's an important consideration as well. So the mechanics around that are that if this is an alpha feature going into a stability release, it needs to have an LGTM or an approve from a SIG leader, the sponsor SIG leader. So if it's a SIG storage feature, I want to see Saad Ali say, looks good to me, it's got solid support, we'll see this through, it's got a clear life cycle to stable, and here's the target releases that will be doing that. It shouldn't require extensive support from the release team above and beyond what is normal for the stabilization. So for example, if it's some sort of far-reaching initiative that requires new cross-cloud integration testing or something like that, we don't want to do that because that's going to cause a burden on the testing infrastructure, the testing lead. We don't want it to require significant extra marketing because the marketing person is probably is responding to other needs for the release. So it should not present a significant expansion of resources in the release team. And essentially the enforcement is called out here in this document to say that this is not something that the release team is going to enforce specifically. For one, the release team doesn't have that authority, nor does it have the capability to police every PR that goes into the code base to make sure that this alpha feature is in alignment. So this means that we need to stay very closely aligned with feature approvers and reviewers to make sure that when they approve or review code that is intended in a stabilization release, that it's consistent. So that means that we need to have a very tight line of control and sight to those people and their activities, and they need to understand, or there should be links to those PRs that they should have those issues in the feature repo linked. So, and last is arbitration. Essentially, that there are cases where SIG sponsorship is not necessarily super clear, or maybe the SIG leaders are on vacation for a quarter, or who knows what. But essentially, if you're a feature champion and you want to get your code into a stabilization release and you're not getting good luck with the SIG process, then you can come to the SIG PM group and say, here's my feature, here's what I've run into in terms of trying to get this on the roadmap. And then the SIG PM would be responsible for trying to marshal the resources, either SIG or SIG architecture, to make sure that it is going to be consistent, supported, and doesn't fall afoul of any of the zeitgeist of the stabilization. So, and then and if the feature is denied by the SIG PM group, then the feature champion has one final appeal, which is to the steering committee. And that should be the absolute last resort sort of thing for that. So that is the document in a nutshell.
Quick question on that. This sort of thing and some of the other actions or decisions that SIG PM does, what's the communication strategy down to SIGs? Because if the SIGs are going to be responsible for gating a lot of this kind of stuff, at least initially, how do we ensure that SIGs are made aware of these sorts of things in an effective manner? Is it kind of the responsibility of SIG leaders to filter that down to their specific SIGs?
Yeah, so I mean, so there should be a SIG representative at SIG PM anyway. And if the SIG PM representative is not able to attend the meetings, they should be watching them offline or doing something. So that's already an established project norm that there should be representation at each SIG. So we need to make sure that that loop is closed,
right?
And that people with alpha features during the stabilization phase, the SIG leaders need to communicate that to them when they propose the feature or when it goes into the SIG's workflow. So again, we need to handle that loop as well and help SIGs be successful in tracking features throughout the release process. But essentially, they should be fully aware, the leadership or some delegate should be fully aware of what the PM activities are for any given release.
James, since I don't think that's necessarily happening, especially in August and so forth, because a lot of the PM reps are out. Should we be sending our proposal to the SIG leads mailing list and maybe giving a summary of it in the email, and then maybe also in the community meeting?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I see us having like Ihor had said, this is a draft and we want to get a good honing of this and testing of it within ourselves before we share it out. So that is a very valid concern. And the thing that I want to see us avoid is, I think the SIG PM representation in our group is very important, and a lack of an attendee is not, I don't think that's a valid excuse. I think a SIG can always find somebody that can attend. And if they can't, then that would indicate that the SIG is not viable. I mean, this is a core responsibility of a SIG, is to be tied in with the product roadmap. In my opinion, highly opinionated.
I would agree with that. I think that also, as has been mentioned, email would be good as well. Not disagreeing with anything that you've said. Just like attempting to reinforce the messaging, at least for the initial period, to make sure that people understand that, yes, you should show up at SIG PM. I mean, we've got, 8 people currently this particular call, and I'm sure we have more than 8 SIGs.
And I feel like it's also missing in the documentation. If you look at like the list of like what SIGs do and where their meetings are, like I don't think I've ever seen on the GitHub documentation that, and by the way, you should be attending SIG PM.
Well, there is a mention that you, as a SIG lead, you have to assign somebody to serve as a SIG PM representative. But yeah, there's no mention that you have to attend every PM meeting and be actively participating in the PM discussions. Yeah, I agree with that, Jason told. So speaking about what and where we're going to discuss that, my initial idea when we have created this document to discuss it here at our local group and to define the initial requirements from the PM perspective. And I would definitely like to discuss it with the wider audience. Probably we may send an announcement to the mailing to Kubernetes dev and Kubernetes SIG leads mailing lists about this document to ask people to submit their suggestions there. And the second step would be the update at the community meeting on Thursday, and to have the wider audience to discuss it.
And Ihor, maybe to increase the closeness between SIG PM and the SIG leads, maybe we should send the minutes of our meeting every time we meet to SIG leads mailing list, and yes, call out the action items that have been assigned to SIG reps, SIG PM reps, so that the SIG leads are aware of what's coming down. Yep,
that sounds like a good idea. So we can do that after our every bi-weekly meeting, or we will have any ad hoc meeting. We can also do the same. So send in the meeting minutes to Kubernetes PM mailing list and to Kubernetes SIG leads mailing list. Yep.
Yeah, that's a fantastic idea.
Yeah, we actually may do that after the recording will be available on YouTube. After the recording of the meeting will be available on YouTube. It may take a few hours to process the video by Zoom, and after that by YouTube. And like in a few hours, we may send an announcement with the meeting minutes and with the recording, so everybody can follow up on the discussion if this person hasn't attended our meeting, but he would like to follow up with what we have discussed here.
And I will,
go ahead.
I was just going to say quickly, so I wrote all the text that's in this document. So Ihor's name is on it, but he hasn't really, to be fair, hasn't had a chance to review it yet. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. The opinions thus far in the document are mine. And yeah, don't blame Ihor.
Yeah, so I had a question on the document, Jace. Actually, so I heard most of the summary of it, but I was wondering, what is really new in terms of the delta for the SIG leads? Because they always had to approve issues. Is the alphas? Yeah, can you summarize that?
Yeah, so this is an interesting thing, and Caleb has called this out, and I think this is one of our most critical risks, is that there is a zero procedural or required connection between SIG leadership and owners/approvers. So a SIG leader can say, heck yeah, this feature looks great to me, and it can be blocked by an owner or vice versa. So essentially what the burden becomes for a SIG leader is that they are now responsible for championing, or they need to approve a alpha feature in a stabilization release explicitly. So it's not good enough for somebody to say in an alpha and the features repo say, this is sponsored by SIG storage, and then there's crickets as far as the SIG leaders in that thread. In order for it to be a fully recognized feature to go into a stabilization release, it needs to have an explicit LGTM from the SIG leaders. That totally does not do anything with the owners or approvers. That that whole nexus, I don't know how to handle that or what to do there, but essentially the SIG leader has to ensure that the owners and approvers for the code bases that they are over know that that is their explicit wish, that this alpha code should be in or out of the release. So that, I have no idea
Okay.
how to handle that.
So it's in addition to the approvers for each. So each feature has a set of approvers from presumably their owning SIG or one of their owning SIGs.
Right.
Now, alpha features in a stability release, in addition to those approvals, have to get the approval of their respective SIG's lead. And what if, I guess, what if their feature overlaps and has two SIGs? Does that, they just have to get one SIG to sign off? And then kind of another question, maybe I missed it, does the release lead or the release team also have to sign off? Or is just SIG lead insufficient?
So I actually wrestled with that a lot. So to answer your first question, if it's a multi-SIG thing, at least one SIG has to approve it. I would hope that if it's multi-SIG, we get into the habit of going to SIG architecture or SIG PM or some overarching body to make sure that there's, you know, adequate support across the project, because cross-cutting issues can be really disruptive. So that's one thing. The second part of your question, I'm not really sure, honestly.
So the release team is not responsible or involved?
I don't know what the right answer is there. Because, I mean, we don't have any authority. We're consumers of that process as opposed to arbitrators. I mean, because the power belongs to SIG or to the owners approvers, and we're just unwitting participants in whatever they decide, right? I mean, we are the actioners of that.
I'm not sure that I agree. I think the release team has a lot of power because the release team, for example, should a feature come in at the last minute before a release goes out, the release owner is the one who decides whether that feature is accepted or not, and then also into the release, not just into the features, but into the release. And then the release team also works on the documentation. So there is, but I agree with you that the release team doesn't have visibility and understanding of every single feature, and so it's better.
Yeah.
Oh, Caleb, I think, was first, and then Ihor.
Okay. I was going to say yes and no to Parna's point. With regard to the exception process, there have been at least a handful of exceptions that I can remember that were filed after the code is already merged. So in terms of being able to gate what goes into the repository, the release team has very few levers in that regard. And all the levers held by the release team can be easily overwritten by people sufficiently high in either the owner's files or who have power vested in them via GitHub directly. In terms of documentation, I agree, but that is, again, if things land in the repository, whether they're documented or not, will not have necessarily impact on the stability of the release. And so it's kind of too late. The horse is out and the barn door is still open.
Ihor?
I guess.
Just for now to get in it. So from my perspective, our release team has to have some high level authority on that, like the governance level. While mostly the technical implementation and the technical design discussion has to be discussed within the SIGs and between SIG and SIG PM, probably between the technical SIGs, and SIG PM. So at the release team, we should have any alternative to deny some requests, to say yes or no to answer some questions, but it shouldn't be the primary responsibility for that. And it can be. Yeah.
I actually have to leave in 3 minutes, but I think that, Aparna's concern is really spot on, is that we are stakeholders in it, right? I mean, we're going to have to live with whatever this decision is, but I think it's less about getting our approval and just that we have total visibility in it. And we have I think we should explicitly, and I'm certainly willing to add this in the document, say that SIG PM will look in depth at these features. And if we see a concern, we are just as apt to raise that as an exception, or raise it as a concern as any SIG that's invested as a stakeholder in the feature. Essentially, we are stakeholders for every feature. Let me put it that way.
Okay, I think I'm comfortable with the proposal as it stands. I think the one thing I would say is that we should perhaps exercise the right between the release team and the SIG PM to call something not a stability release, even if it was planned to be a stability release. If we feel that, you know, at the end of the day, the SIGs and all the exception process has, you know, sort of overwhelmed the stability criteria, then I think we should have the authority to call it not a stability.
Right, and essentially that's saying the release is the content, or the release is represented by the code in it, and if it is mostly alpha code, then it is inherently not a stabilization release. So
yeah, do we have the criteria for what is a stability release?
More or less, yes. I kind of was wondering, like, should we say that no more than, say, 25% of the total feature count should be more than, you know, there should be no more than 25% alpha features, and, or, you know, some sort of like metric like that. And I was wrestling whether that was really it. I mean, so my experience in managing really Wild West type dev shops with lots of intersecting projects and teams is that you actually have to just incentivize people to do the right thing based on the desire for the outcome, and not necessarily through enforcement of policy. I mean, the policy has to be that everybody cares.
Yeah, if we have something like 25% who's like, which SIG should be able to like use those.
Right, and that just gets so horrible. We just have to, everybody has to care that we are going to, as a project, fail if we're not following this cadence. It's a simple thing.
No, I mean, I fully agree with that. I think that's right. It has to be self-driven and not based on penalization. But for the purposes of marketing and blogging and documentation, we have to know if the release is a stability release or not. We need to be able to somehow make that call, right? And it,
well, maybe,
I'm not sure if it's a metric in terms of percentage, or, you know, it's like an overall judgment.
yeah, and that's.
Yeah,
So
I would like to second, sorry, like one note. I'd like to second a partner regarding that, because we really have to define some line and some deadline when we have to ask people, when we have to ask developers and their technical SIGs to to provide us, as the product managers, to provide us with some information regarding that, what they're going to implement in this interest release. Because again, in terms of marketing perspective, in terms of like some user expectations and so on, we have to really define which kind of release it's going to be with 1.8, 1.9 later. Yeah, so we have to find like some specific date when we can really describe that and define it.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and I so wish I didn't have to go to this meeting. But what I would say is we just need to be mindful that a stability release is an unfunded mandate. And essentially our desire to put one out does not necessarily reflect that it's going to be put out, precisely because of that. So I think that we need to just be flexible in that regard, so we can have an intent, just like Aparna said, you know, we'll have the intent. 1.10 should be a stabilization release because it's an even number release. However, if that is an unfunded mandate until people actually contribute the code necessary to promote the features in 1.10. So I think we should just call that out in the document.
Yeah, and then we can say, like, the SIGs did not succeed in making it a stability release, and here's the breakdown of who's working on what.
That is so, and I think that's what we're going to do with this release. So I think that's a really good thing to do. Just call it out, give it visibility, say, we did not accomplish our goal. It's great that we've got all these alpha features, but this is not the release we had hoped for. Thank you so much, everybody, and so I will watch for feedback on that.
Yep, thanks, Jason. So the second part of our agenda is, well, first of all, does anybody have any questions regarding the previous topic? Or will we have to discuss something else? Good.
I mean, I definitely have
Yep.
things to say, but I can drop them into the document. I guess the only thing worth talking about is that we still have not defined whether a SIG lead is supposed to be an administrative facilitation head or supposed to be a kind of technical leader. Their governance docs does not say, as Jace brought up, the intersection between the contributor ladder and the SIG structure. It does not make that clear. And there's been pushback from at least a couple of the SIG leads, thinking Daniel Smith and Derek Wayne Carr, about what that role is supposed to be and adding more nominally administrative duties to SIG leadership. So I guess that would be nice to get some kind of consensus on that. But that's it.
So what I thought was like SIG leadership would be more like a chore, not like have any real power associated with it. That was my picture before, at least. Is that still true, or are we like
I think
to redefine?
Right, and I think the stabilization draft assumed that is no longer the case, and I think that there's a lot of people who agree with your view, Lucas, that SIG lead is not supposed to have any particular authority, and so that mismatch needs to be resolved in some governance chartering documentation somewhere, and that's like a consensus-driven thing. But in order to get an effort like this done, the stabilization release criteria, I think we need to decide that because the SIG leads don't have necessarily any power to enforce that today. At least none of the automation enables them to gate features in this way.
What about just having yet another list or something like feature approvers or something per SIG that could be like, it could be more than, I mean, a normal SIG lead number is like 2 or 1. But if we identify 3 or something like, and if the feature is controversial, it would need approval from all 3 or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea, and we can definitely put our suggestions in the doc. And I mean, I hope I guess we'll see what we get from the governance readout. But this seems to be a top-level concern of the process. But I don't want to eat any more time before the SIG updates because we only got about 15 minutes.
Yeah, speaking about the list of some technical people who can approve features and so on, we have initially agreed that that's going to be a person from the owner's file from some specific area. It's not a mandatory rule, but that was likely since the early beginning of the features process. Okay, so anything else to discuss now about the stabilization releases and related errors? Seems no. So the second part of our agenda is about their updates from the SIGs regarding 1.8 features. Unfortunately, we haven't received enough updates from the previous meeting on Thursday, and I also don't see any PM representatives from the SIGs that haven't reported at the previous meeting. I see only Dan from SIG Network, Caleb from SIGNode, Lucas from Cluster Lifecycle. We have only Doug Davis. Doug Davis from Service Catalog, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, so do we have any features Service Catalog?
Not for 1.8, no.
Okay. So we don't have anything to discuss regarding the 1.8 features right now because we don't have representatives. Probably we have something to discuss without PM representatives regarding that.
I think Lucas has a demo.
Yeah. And also I was going to ask what happens if PM representatives for SIGs aren't attending the meetings? Do we have any clear escalation path for that?
Today, nothing.
I see. But is it like, I just checked our SIG class lifecycle PM representative seems to be Dan.
Yeah.
I don't know if he has been active here.
No, we're trying to replace him at CoreOS, but if you wanted a SIG to do so, definitely. I think we've undergone 1 or 2 changes in the project. Like AWS had a change. Someone left left the SIG leadership. So I think as a SIG, you can decide if you want to change your PM rep or your SIG leads yourself. I have a person proposed. I have a person to propose from CoreOS to take up Dan's role. But if you want to find someone yourselves, that is also fine.
It just meant that I can like edit the agenda for the SIG class lifecycle meeting. It's in 20 minutes, so.
Yep,
I mean,
I think that'd be a good thing to do. We can talk about it there too.
Yep. Cool.
And that's actually the question that has been highlighted by Jorge regarding like attending PM meetings has to be a requirement for the SIG representative. So we have to also like define what should happen if this person does not attend these meetings and so on.
Right. I guess there's a responsibility on our end to make the meetings useful for our attendees. I worry that there is some voting with their feet going on, and so maybe we need to nice public frogging, and maybe there's a mismatch between what the PM reps are expecting to get out of the meeting and what they currently get out.
So we don't have any. So Lucas, have you edit the demo for today, right? You'd like to show us some demo from SIG cluster lifecycle today or later? Because I see only the suggestion in our meeting notes, so can you comment on it?
Where? Yeah, so I added it to the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
If that's okay, cool. Yeah, if we don't have anything else to discuss, I can do the demo.
Yeah, we have 20 minutes more.
Yeah, so basically 1.8 is going to be a stabilization release from SIG cluster lifecycle perspective. I mean, pretty much everything we have is trying to get to beta at least, or targeted for beta. And one of the things that are targeted for beta is kubeadm upgrades. We made kubeadm, like the CLI experience and all that, beta in 1.6, but upgrades was still in alpha. But now we're pushing upgrades and hopefully some extensibility properties of kubeadm, and also some bits of the implementation. We've still highlighted the implementation of what kubeadm does as alpha, as it depends on some alpha features. But that all is hopefully going to get beta in 1.8, and that's really good to see one step towards GA later. Let me see if I can share my screen. Oh no, it wasn't that one. Okay, can you see what I have here now?
Yeah, I can see it.
Yep, we can see it.
Cool. So first, some minutes ago, I ran this command, kubeadm init with API server to bind on 443 versus the normal 6443. And I used Kubernetes version 1.7.2. everything initialized as usual. And well, I went on and applied Weave as a pod network. And now I can do an upgrade to 173. So I'll first check what upgrades are available. This is this all is gated behind an alpha command, but it will graduate soon-ish to top level Kubernetes alpha upgrade. That's what it looks like. And I have two subcommands I can use. Plan is the command you usually run first. So if I run Kubernetes alpha plan, it says that it first checks like everything's healthy, like all nodes are healthy, the API server is healthy, and such things. It then reads my configuration from the cluster. It's a config map. And this makes sure, like, if the user had initialized, like I did with the API server listening on 443, which is not the default, it should be preserved on an upgrade. Otherwise, it's kind of painful if all customizations are overridden on upgrade, which should not be the case. So that's one thing. Then it checks what versions are available to upgrade to. And we have currently 172, and Kubernetes, the client is from master, or like my fork. And the latest version generally available is 173. And also I'm on 1.7, and the latest patch version is 1.7.3. And it here says that I can upgrade to 1.7.3. And I'll go ahead and do that. So then I'm going to write Kubernetes upgrade apply and which version I want to upgrade to. Then it does the same health checks as usual and says that, are you sure you want to upgrade? And first it pre-pulls the images, which otherwise could take a really long time or like stall out totally. So before we even start the upgrade, it creates a daemon set that lands on every node, on every master, that makes sure the control plane images are available on all masters. We currently support one, but that's a goal for 1.9. And then we, like, this is using a static pod hosted control plane. So we're basically just shuffling files around on disk. We'll default to self-hosted control plane in 1.8. But if you're upgrading from 1.7 to 1.8, the static pod hosted control plane will be preserved. So if I run kubectl version, I'm now going to see that my server version is 1.7.3. And yeah, I think that's it, mostly. There's some extra features around, but yeah, it should just work in most cases. And like, if we do a cat etc Kubernetes manifests kube API server, we can see that what we're running now is 1.7.3, and its secure port is set to 443, which means that the values I put into Kubernetes init the first time were preserved after the upgrade as well. So, any comments, questions?
No, but that, oh, I don't happy, but that was awesome. I'm really glad to see the Kubernetes upgrade making progress. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, thanks.
I have a quick question for you, Lucas. So I'm really looking forward to this, so thanks. there's been also a concerted effort to have a bunch of other tools consume kubeadmin. There's like a working group now. Can you like kind of, you know, so I can put it in the notes, like, how's that going? Like, who do you have buy-in from? That sort of thing. Because I feel that that's going to be really key now to have all these, everybody's favorite Kubernetes installer kind of, you know?
Yeah. So Justin and myself started the kubeadm adoption working group 3 weeks ago. It was announced at the community meeting. And the basic goal is to, let me stop sharing that. So the basic goal is to just provide, from the kubeadm side, provide the right extension points. So there will basically be a kubeadm face command with a lot of different commands like generate certificates or generate kubeconfig files, generate control plane manifests, or upgrade any given static pod control plane to a self-hosted one. Or so a lot of these utility functions. So what kubeadm init does is eight things also after each other, and these 8 atomic phases have defined inputs and outputs. And as long as you can swap one out for like whatever you want to do, if you still satisfy the like interface on a file level or resource, Kubernetes API resource level. So one of the examples for GKE is we don't have the CA key on disk like in cluster, like default kubeadm clusters do. Instead, we can just pre-provision, like where we have the CA key, you just run kubeadm phase certs and generate all. And it will then take the CA key and generate the right certificates. They can, like, and this is on some internal machine on GCE, not something a customer ever touches. So then it could be copied over to the real machine where the master will be running. And you could actually do kubeadm init, and it will just see that, oh, here I don't have any CA key, but it's okay. And I'll just continue because all the certs were specified for me anyway. And those kinds of things. You can, one other we discussed was GKE doesn't like advertise the master, so you can't schedule workloads on it. And that's also a thing that's done by default in kubeadm. But you can just, like with this kubeadm face interface, you can just don't run this kubeadm face command against your cluster. You just omit it and proceed, because in the end it's optional. So as long as you provide like the minimum, we'll still like write a doc about what's the minimum thing called that can be called a Kubernetes cluster, and this is really, really hard to define. One metric of it is like, does it pass conformance tests? But there's a lot more, like on a cluster level. But we'll see how we can. We'll start with documentation, right? These things should be default in any Kubernetes cluster, like from a deployment perspective, and then like move on and try to like consolidate the different deployment methods as much as we can. And it's definitely going to be a long runner. I mean, getting everyone on the same page, like on a minimum basis, is hard, but I think it's an effort worth putting like a lot of well, it's worth putting effort into it. So any more details also? I mean, we've had 2 meetings so far, and we have bi-weekly meetings on Tuesdays, pretty much 1 hour from now, if somebody's interested.
Yeah, thanks for the detail. I just want to make sure that people are more aware that that's coming, and that's like a good thing.
All right. Thank you, Lucas. Any other questions, any other topics to discuss? We have 7 more minutes.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention after the last community meeting, some people had opinions on how to like infuse more SIG PM-ish type things into the community meeting. So many people were giving recommendations that I didn't know how to actually schedule the community meeting. So I just asked on the community list, what did you all mean, to hopefully see what, like, do people want to see a separate SIG PM section? Should we reuse like the same SIG reporting structure, but put it in the meeting? Like it seems that we had different opinions on what it was. So we have 2 days to change the community meeting if we want to do it this week. So I just threw that out there if you have strong opinions one way or the other.
I don't have any specific suggestions regarding that, so probably we may really report every meeting or every second meeting. Every second meeting is more likely because we have SIG PM meetings every second week. So we won't have like some major updates on the different week. But at the same time, having like the general project updates can be a good slot, not only for SIG PM, but also for the different like horizontal SIGs, like SIG architecture, SIG contributors, SIG, I don't remember any of them. So if that works for you, that sounds good. We can do that. We can commit it.
You can always change it if you don't like it. I mean,
Yep.
yeah.
Kala Papana, do you have any thoughts regarding this? Are you good with that or against of this idea?
Regarding the timing?
Well, regarding having a SIG PM update at least on every second community meeting on Thursday, as proposed.
Yeah, I like that, but I also like if we want to find a different time, would be supportive. Yeah, I mean, I've always been a fan of giving updates in the community meetings. We should definitely do that. Every other meeting sounds good.
Yeah. So we're good, Jorge.
Okay, starting this week or next week?
At least we'll have an update this week regarding the stabilization release process.
Okay. Yep,
That's
that's
really good.
Yep. I think that'll help alleviate if SIG PM's kind of in your face every community meeting, then like people don't have an excuse to like, I've missed that this was a stability release, right? It's like.
Yeah. At least we have anything really important and interesting to discuss every second week at our PM meetings. So we have to reflect, like, to make the brief update what have we discussed on Tuesday, to make the brief update on Thursday.
Right. Cool.
Anything else to discuss? We have 4 more minutes.
Well, we're actually 6 minutes over.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this ends at 8:50.
Okay, so if we don't have anything else to discuss, thank you for joining us today, and see you in 2 weeks and on Thursday. Thank you.
Bye, all.
Bye.